verify if okay yung audio on your end.
Clear po, sir.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Kenneth. So, thank you, Rafael. So let's move forward to finish up early since it's almost the end of the day. Probably we're done by 5 p.m. It's a pretty short discussion. So we'll have an attendance. I'll provide a few questions and we'll finish up yung natirang slides on the previous chapter or on the previous module. So let's go ahead and let's start. I'll start off with our attendance. Let me pull it up. Okay, let's have Africa, Aguila,
Present po.
Liguin, Arroyo,
Present po.
Bakar, Calosa.
Present po, sir.
So we got Bakar just entered. Calosa is here. Capilla, Ringal,
Present po, sir.
Seniza,
Present po, sir.
Cruz, Ubos,
Present po, sir.
Quezon,
Present po, sir.
El Campo, De La Cruz,
Present po, sir.
Eliosida, Espiritu, Gadi Noel, Gadi Rafael, Gamir, Fuengo, Herrero. Thank you, Herrero. Got it. Higwit, Hugo Carl,
Present po.
Ladaga, Dem,
Present po.
Madria,
Present po.
Magadia, Nai,
Present po.
Manuel
Present, sir.
Morales, Olorosissimo.
Present, sir.
Thank you. Ruth, how do you pronounce your surname? Sorry, it's quite long.
Surname po?
Yung surname mo, how do you pronounce it? Correct.
Olorosissimo po, sir.
Okay, thank you. We got Ortiz, Panganiban, Pontanares. Thank you, Panganiban. Got it. Pontanares, we don't have. Santos Nicole. Okay, thank you. So any question with the previous topic we have on 422, the station process, taking a look with the production, Aliguin. Thank you, Aliguin. Any questions bothering you for that or from our previous discussion? Thank you, Bakar. Got it. Guess wala naman. Ortiz, I got that, Ortiz. How about with the documentary you have watched? Any question, any clarification with the documentary, or is it clear with okay, I'll take that as a yes. So I guess you have watched the documentary, and I think everything's clear naman with our previous discussion. So let's have a few questions on board. I was scrolling a while ago. It's actually on the social media, but I got the news link regarding which is pretty connected with our topic. I got it in a European news agency. So could you provide me this picture I got from the news article on what station does this aircraft is currently with, or on what processor station? I'm showing the picture now. Everybody could answer, or anyone could answer. Thank you, Capilia. So correct. That is station 18. Thank you, Capilia. Let me note on that. Capilia, Andrea. So it's station 18, as Capilia said. You could see the aircraft. It's an A350, exactly perfect on our previous topic. I've seen it in the news, and you could see, to confirm that it's in station 18, you could see that the aircraft is outside. So it's on the testing process outside. And you could see na wala pa siyang engine. So technically, wala pa siya, or it's not yet done with station 20 and this station for the painting process, since wala pa siyang paint. Only the vertical stabilizer is painted. So it's pretty clear na it's from station 18. Thank you, Andrea. And anyone could provide me what airline is this aircraft? Any idea? With a tail? Very good. Very fast. Karingal. Thank you, Karingal. So it's from Ryanair. It's a recent news article regarding their new orders of A350. So this is Ryanair, yung vertical stabilizer na yan. It's a low-cost airline, if I'm not mistaken, in Europe. It's together with EasyJet, Ryanair. That's the common low-cost airline available in Europe. So I think the lesson is pretty clear. Thank you for Kapilya and Karinal. We'll proceed with the lesson. I'll pull out the PowerPoint, so afterwards you could have your coffee or your break or your day off afterwards. I think I'm the last subject, so yeah, let's move on and I'll pull out the PowerPoint.
And even yung mga procedures with the airline, with the aerodrome, standard recommending procedures from the ICAO, Civil Aviation Authority of the Philippines din po ang mag-facilitate nun in the country or sa Philippines. Another function is, of course, meron din tayong mga training, also manage yung licensing. But with us, aeronautical engineers, yung license natin is not under CAP. Our license will be under PRC. Under lang ng CAP is usually more on with the pilot's license and with aircraft maintenance or yung mga AMT natin and AVT. Sila din po yung nagfa-facilitate ng mga license. And as I mentioned, they also maintain yung compliance natin with the ICAO, lahat ng mga standard and recommending procedures. So sila yung nagpa-validate, and kung may kailangan i-amend or baguhin na kaunti para it will suit or it will be applied to the Philippines, sila din po ang nagma-manage everything na function and powers prescribed by the law, and of course with the ICAO as a member of the ICAO. Next up will be ICAO Annex 8, airworthiness of the aircraft. So the ICAO publish annexes which contain yung mga standard and recommending practices related sa aircraft design, construction, and operation, which must be complied appropriately by the country. However, yung compliance naman, it's not for the country to adapt yung mga practices as a whole, as I mentioned. So you should all be familiar with the ICAO annexes. Usually lumalabas nito with the board exam. So you should be familiar. It's 18 annexes, starting from personal licensing, rules of air, going to aeronautical charts, ending on Annex 18, transport of dangerous goods on the air. But with this lesson, or with the whole course, we'll be focusing majority sa ICAO Annex 8, which is titled Airworthiness of the Aircraft. So it contains 4 parts. Definition. Part 2 deals with the procedures, certification, and continuing airworthiness of an aircraft. Part 3 on technical requirements, and Part 4 we have a specialized part that will deal with helicopters or rotary wing aircraft. So the ICAO Annex, the Annex 8 specifically published para dun sa state of registry or dun sa pagdadala ng ating aircraft or ng aircraft part to recognize and i-render yung valid airworthiness certificate issued by another contracting state or another country. So for example, specific example, di ba yung example, we made an aircraft in the US, or they made an aircraft under the US. Of course, merong silang FAA, a regulatory body, na magmamandate sa certification on. And if the aircraft was transferred to the Philippines, so sinasabi with the ICAO Annex 8 na we have to render, recognize, and i-validate na lang yung airworthiness na na-issued na on that another contracting state. So as long as that these requirements that will be issued or rendered will be equal or above the minimum standard prescribed by the ICAO or by the local authority. So kaya tayo may Annex 8 airworthiness of the aircraft. With the airworthiness or Annex 8, nandito yung application with the National Airworthiness Authority, yung process, yung minimum basis, what I mentioned, equal or above minimum, for the recognition of the certificate of airworthiness doon sa iba't ibang state or territory. And we'll go on as we move forward sa ating course or subject. We'll go on a much further detail with the Annex 8. Today, or with this Module 1, sort of background muna tayo para may idea tayo. So doon, ICAO Annex 8, airworthiness of aircraft. And as I mentioned kanina, be familiar with the other annexes since it will be a vital information on your board exam. Kasi based on my experience, natatanong to kung ano yung Annex 4, Annex 7, and stuff like that. Not mainly na to go in details with every annexes, but as much as possible, be familiar kung ano yung nilalaman per annex. Moving forward into our next slide, we got EASA Part 1. So it's under EASA. certification of aircraft and related products, part and appliances, and of design and production organization. So with this part 21, you will hear that or hear this most of the time, since not only on our subject but through your career, since it will be one of the most important um, laws. My counterpart to with the FAA will be reviewing that later. Now we'll govern yun, self-explanatory, as you could see on the slide, certification of aircraft and related products, which include parts and appliances. So ito yung magiging unang, or nandito yung mga procedure in order for us to have a certificate with the aircraft or with the part before we proceed with the airworthiness process. So magkaiba yun. With the EASA part 21, moving on into our next slide. So meron siyang subparts. So we got the general provision, type certificate, restricted, supplemental type certificate, and production without production organization approval, and got noise, design, parts, appliances, repairs. So commonly self-explanatory naman yung ating subparts here. You could understand it immediately or have a basic explanation on your mind kung ano yung nilalaman ng mga subparts. Maybe I'll discuss na lang if you are not familiar. So we got three words here, contradicting words, not really contradicting, but three different words. So take a note on this. We got type certificate, as you could see on subpart B, and restricted type certificate. Another, on subpart E, we got supplemental type certificate. And maybe you're wondering, so ito na yung certification process ng aircraft or ng products. However, you're wondering kung ano yung pagkakaiba ng tatlo. So the type certificate, that is the document issued by EASA that an applicant or the company demonstrated yung compliance nila with the design of that specific product or aircraft. And please be reminded that this certificate is not an airworthiness certificate. So ibang procedure pa to. This is just, or it just state na the company or the applicant complied with the design applicable on that certain product or aircraft. Next up is yung restricted type certificate. With the restricted type certificate naman, ito yung a-apply ng isang company or ng applicant if yung design ng product nila or ng aircraft is inappropriate doon sa mga available na type certificate. So dito na papasok yung mga design with special purpose or yung mga design na bago sa aviation. So if walang technical description under with a type certificate, papasok siya with the restricted type certificate. So sa restricted type certificate, pag inappropriate or hindi pasok yung design doon sa available sa type certificate. And lastly is yung supplemental type certificate. Supplemental type certificate naman po, ito yung i-issue together with the type certificate if yung applicant or yung company already have a type certificate, however, they wish to modify yung kanilang product. So magkakaroon sila ng modification, alteration with the product or with the aircraft. So of course, to make the process short, not to reapply again with the type certificate, reapply with the airworthiness, they will be issuing only supplemental type certificate, STC. So this is for modified aeronautical product, aircraft, or parts. Next slide will be yung part 21 naman ng Federal Aviation Regulation under ng FAA. So ito naman yung counterpart ng EASA part 21 with the or with the state or United States. Titled Certification Procedures for Products and Parts within the aviation. So kasama na rin dito yung mga aircraft. So with the part 21, so ayun, we got procedural requirement for issuing and changing design approvals, production approvals, airworthiness certificates, airworthiness approvals. We have also yung rules governing for the applicant, procedural requirements for the approvals of these articles or with this law. And same with the EASA, meron din po siyang mga subparts. So the subpart is containing this A to letter P. So the subparts is almost the same with the EASA since they all base their law naman under ICAO. So almost may mga counterpart, actually ibang letter nga almost the same yung nilalaman. So also be familiar with this. So we also have type certificate here, supplemental type certificate as we have discussed a while ago. However, meron tayong bagong word dito na we could see na wala dun sa IASA, and that is the provisional type certificate. So the provisional type certificate is also a design approval. However, yung only difference nito with the common or the type certificate or the original type certificate is that it comes with time and operational limitation. So yung design po ay bounded ng certain time. So you could have this provisional type certificate pag may mga new inventions din that we need to test in the aviation industry. So may allowable limitation and may allowable time for it to be used. So the original purpose actually kaya nila ginawa yung provisional type certificate is before nung nag-change tayo from the regular piston engine to the jet turbine or the jet age. Nung nagpapalit na tayo ng mas advanced engine, ginawa nila yung provisional type certificate since wala pa naman tayong type certificates or technicals under the jet turbine. So ginawa nila yung provisional type certificate in order for some companies na matest yung kanilang mga jet engine. So yun, another word to take note, provisional type certificate. And almost all other subparts naman, self-explanatory kung ano yung nilalaman. Next up, or next slide, we'll have aircraft certification requirements. So we have discussed kanina yung mga subparts ng FAA and EASA. And we have discussed also yung mga type certificate. Yung regular na type certificate, we have the supplemental, provisional, and we have another one a while ago. And then with this aircraft certification requirement, we'll be discussing yung nilalaman ng type certificate. As I've mentioned, meron na tayong basis or type certificate available with every specific design. So papasok na lang tayo dun sa ibang type certificate if may bago tayong product, may bago tayong part, or magkakaroon tayo ng modification. So with the certification requirements, so we'll take a look dun sa type certificate available. So this specific document is under your module. So you could see here yung mga available na type certificate. So we got EASA on the left side and for the FAA on the right hand side. And you could almost see here yung mga available designs under or both regulatory body. And actually almost the same, there are counterparts on every regulatory body. And please be familiar with this. Be familiar kung ano yung nilalaman per part. Moving into our last slide for module 1. Or for this module, we will take a look on the type certification process. This type certification process is just an overview on how the process is made, pero hindi siya ganon ka-detailed. What is the current or the actual process? Since this is under the law, under a regulating body, it changes from time to time yung mga procedure. But this is just an overview or representation para magkaroon tayo ng outlook on how the process is made. So we got 4 steps. First is the technical overview and certification basis. Dito papasok yung ating designer ng product or yung company na nag-design ng product, where he will be presenting yung kanyang product or aircraft doon sa PCA. So the PCA stands for the Primary Certificating Authority. So it's the one we have discussed, EASA in EU and FAA in the US. So the certification team of the company representing the product will set the rules that will be applied for the certification ng specific product or aircraft na to. And if the or if this is agreed, the certification basis or this basis na pinresent ng designer will be available or will be unchanged for 5 years for an aircraft and 3 years for an engine. Next step will be the step 2 certification program. Here naman, the PCA and the designer will define and agree doon sa certification basis. So dito nila i-check yung every requirement ng certification basis doon sa compliance ng product or ng specific type ng product or aircraft. Third will be the compliance demonstration. If nag-agreed na si PCA and the designer, so on the third step will be the demonstration ng compliance ng aircraft dun sa mga regulatory requirements. So magiging detailed na sila, specifically with the airframe, system, engines, yung flying capacity, qualities, and performance. And then lastly, the fourth step, of course, if na-demonstrate na ni ng designer to PCA or with the regulatory body, yung design and yung compliance. Lastly, the step 4 will be the technical closure, and of course, yung issuance na yung type certificate. When they already been satisfied with the demonstration ng designer, the type certificate will be issued specifically kung saan yung PCA na to or yung regulatory body or with the country. So ayun, that ends our discussion with module 1. So, and with the discussion for this specific PowerPoint, taking a look with the airline compliance, with the regulatory bodies, and some of the processes and some of the laws governing aircraft production, aircraft products, and ports.
There we go. We're done with our module 1. We'll be finalizing the module 2 next week, again, Wednesday. So any questions so far with the lesson we have discussed for today? Any questions you wanted to clarify? Okay, I guess no question with the lesson. So I'll be discussing one thing only with the lesson. Wanted to clarify, or which I wanted to clarify. So common, maraming nagkakamali with the differences of 3 main thing, that is type certificate, the production certificate, and the airworthiness certificate. So these 3 things differs from one another. First up is yung type certificate. more on banggit kanina a few times, which also have several examples. So a type certificate, it's a document given by the FAA doon sa manufacturer or doon sa designer ng aircraft. So once lang to binibigay per aircraft design. So parang sort of patent mo siya on the aviation regulation or with the FAA or AS. The type certificate confirms that your aircraft is equal or above the standard given for that certain design. For example, we have Cessna Aircraft Company. They hold a type certificate for a Cessna 172. So it means that the Cessna 172 conforms in the design ng FAA doon sa light training aircraft. So that is type certificate. It's with the design issued once to the manufacturer or to the designer. Moving forward, yung production certificate naman po. For the word itself, production, so the production certificate is a certificate provided and approved by the FAA, allowing a manufacturer to produce a copy ng aircraft na meron ng type certificate. So yung production certificate, it can be given to a lot of companies or several times, since may mga instances that the production is not made or processed by the original company. So may mga company na nagde-design lang, hindi sila nagpo-produce. And may mga times naman that the company or the specific company na nag-design na may type certificate on that aircraft, magkakaroon sila ng bulk orders. They have to reach the schedule of the orders. So they have to hire another or a third company to help with the production. So yun, pwede may mag-issue doon ng another production certificate. So yung production certificate, from the word itself, it's a certificate allowing that certain company to produce the aircraft na nakapasa na ng type certificate. So it is given to the manufacturer. Third naman po is yung airworthiness certificate. Airworthiness certificate, ito madalas makakahawa kayo niyan upon working. The airworthiness certificate is given naman po per aircraft. So for example, meron kayong 10 Cessna on your company. So you have or you're supposed to have 10 airworthiness certificate per aircraft. It provides and certifies that the aircraft or your particular or that specific aircraft is airworthy. So ito yung kailangan or ichine-check ng regulatory body from time to time kung airworthy yung aircraft mo. Pinapasa nila yan, continuous yung airworthiness mo. Pwede rin siyang ma-revoke pag hindi ka nakapasa, may nangyari dun sa aircraft, may natagpo ang major problem, nagkaroon ka ng major modification na wala na doon sa design, which hindi naman na-approve or hindi mo na ipaalam. So, the airworthy or airworthiness certificate, it is given doon sa operator ng aircraft, kung sino ang nag-ooperate. So, for example, yun nga, may Cessna ka, you have the airworthiness certificate. Pero yung type certificate ng Cessna is nasa Cessna na company, wala sa'yo. So the type certificate issued dun sa designer, production certificate issued sa manufacturer, and yung airworthiness certificate is issued doon sa may-ari ng aircraft or doon sa operator. So maybe you're wondering, sir, pwede mo magkaiba yung may-ari and yung operator? Yes, it happened. Maraming instances that the aircraft is borrowed or lease lang doon sa may actual na may-ari. So may mga major companies pa tayo who own the aircraft. And some airlines and some aviation company, nagli-lease lang sila ng aircraft for their own function. So there we go. Ayun lang ang gusto kong i-clarify. Huwag kayong malito with the type certificate, production certificate, and with the airworthiness certificate. So, one question for now. Okay, I'll ask question. Maybe a 2 question before we end the discussion. First question, it's a certificate that was made before for or to provide dun sa mga aircraft and products na bago doon sa ating or sa FAA or sa US. It is generally designed doon sa pagpalit natin from piston engine aircraft going to the jet engine aircraft. So anong certificate?
So,
Go ahead.
provisional type certificate.
Thank you, Arroyo. As Arroyo said or Elisa said, that is provisional type certificate. Thank you. I'll record that. Hold on. So yun, ginawa siya dati kasi nagkakaroon ng mga innovation. Since wala naman doon sa mga design na type certificate yun, kailangan nila maglabas ng provisional type certificate. So papasok na rin doon kung nagkaroon kayo ng bagong invention na aircraft na medyo off sa design ng mga common aircraft or outside doon sa type certificate or designs available sa batas. So doon na papasok yung provisional type certificate. Another question, last question before we end the discussion. I mentioned the production certificate conforms that one company or the manufacturer is allowed to produce the aircraft. However, that only or it is only available sa US. As you could see on the PowerPoint, if you have it on your end, yung production certificate ay available lang sa FAA. So if I wanted to produce an aircraft under an EU country, under EASA, saan ako papasok kung hindi production certificate? So ano yung kailangan kong i-process? Saang part ng EASA to papasok?
Sir, try lang po. Sir, hindi po ba siya sa standards and recommended practices of the ICAO po?
Yes, it's everything is under on the standard recommended practices. I need the specific kung ano siya sa EASA. Or as my example nga, kunyari nasa EU country ako, EU governing country, Europe. I need something para makapag-rely ako ng production. So saang sub-part to papasok ng EASA? Anyone? Or
Part 21.
yes, it's part 21. So I need a more detailed, Carl or anyone. Saan siya sa part 21? Wala kasing production certificate dun eh. So saan ako doon pupunta?
Sir,
Go ahead.
sa subpart J po ba?
Subpart J, and what does subpart J stands for?
Procedures for the approval of design organizations po.
Don't provision. No, sorry, who's that? Rafael, meron na akong design eh. I wanted to produce it. So ano yung counterpart ng production certificate?
Sir, yan po ba yung production approval?
Okay, who's that? Who answered?
Carl po. Pugaw
Okay.
po.
Thank you, Carl. Sorry.
Production Sir, ayun po ba yung tanong? Sorry, medyo naguluhan din po.
Yes, correct. Yun yung tanong. So, that's correct. So, pagka sa FAR or sa FAA, you could see na meron tayong subpart for production certificate. That is subpart G. Ang counterpart niya naman with the EASA, so wala silang production certificate. So, medyo may pagka-politics. Of course, ayaw naman nilang like exactly copied. So, meron tayong process with the production organization approval. Very good, Carl. Thank you. Any questions so far before I end the discussion? Anyone who has questions, go ahead. Okay, I guess wala nang question. Thank you, Carl, for answering. I've recorded that. And sino yung isa? kanina, Arroyo. Thank you. And thank you, class. I'll be providing the activity for Friday. Kay Ruth, I'll send it as soon as it is available. I forward it through Messenger na lang. So, see you on Wednesday. Friday, asynchronous tayo. Thank you, guys. Have a good day and a good afternoon.
Thank you po, sir.
Thank you po.
Thank you po, sir.
Thank you po, sir.